And wanted to address a couple of issues that have come up over the last couple of days. First of all, I have never once had a conversation with Governor Mike Braun. He has never reached out to me individually or has had any contact with the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. He has never once offered any resources. He has never once told us what his plan or solutions would be to teen gun violence. And there's been no contact between us and the governor. And when we're talking about an issue like youth violence, certainly we'd appreciate the governor's input because he can have a significant impact on the way things are handled. Gun violence touches on all aspects of our community. It touches on our schools, it touches on parents and home life, it touches on the Marion County Prosecutor's Office, but most importantly to the governor, it touches on DCS, the Department of Child Services, which is an agency that he's actually in charge of, that he is the head of, where we deal with so many individuals in our community who are under the jurisdiction of DCS, and it should be a surprise to no one that when kids are struggling in their home life, when they have less than ideal parental situations, sometimes that manifests itself in violence. And almost always those kids have had prior contact with the governor's agency, and it hasn't always produced the best outcomes. And so there's a real opportunity for the governor to lead on this issue, in particular with how he addresses DCS. But offering criticism without solutions is not leadership. And when we talk about the issue of what was going on downtown, it's important to remember that this conversation started about the issue of curfews. And when we have conversations about curfews, everybody has acknowledged that this is not a punitive law. The Indiana legislature has made the determination that you cannot arrest and take someone to jail for a curfew violation. That was the choice the Indiana legislature made. And it's an unfortunate but sad reality that most of those kids who are impacted by the curfew law and who are going downtown, once again, fall under the jurisdiction of DCS. They're not necessarily involved in the criminal justice system, but they are involved with DCS. And DCS is offering those kids services, and for whatever reason, those services have not benefited those kids, and too oftentimes, we see those kids end up in the criminal justice system. And the governor has a real opportunity to lead and course correct with DCS. DCS has had some very high profile incidents where certainly their response and action involving kids has been called into question. The previous head of DCS resigned because they didn't feel like they had adequate resources. And so there's a really good conversation that could be had and should be had to try to figure out what we can do as it relates to an issue as complicated as youth violence that impacts so many different agencies other than just the criminal justice system, the schools, DCS. All of us have to come together to try to find that solution. And I think what the governor will learn is that when you encourage everyone to have a gun, when you pass permitless carry, it should come no surprise to anyone that those guns are going to end up in the hands of kids. And when you have no private regulation of gun sales, it should come as no surprise that those guns are going to end up in the hands of kids. And if you don't believe how serious of a problem this is and how deadly of a problem this is in our community, you can look at any one of the number of cases that are currently pending in Marion County where we have charged someone with murder in a gun deal gone bad. And if you look at previous individuals we have convicted of murder this year in Marion County, you will see that there's a number of individuals who've been convicted of murder, and the circumstances is a gun deal gone bad involving kids less than 18 years of age. And when you encourage everybody to have a gun and there's no obligation that they know anything about how that device works or functions, you're going to see a number of accidental shootings, which is something we're also dealing with here in Marion County that directly impacts young people in this city. And so the most important thing for us to do is to continue to focus on the work and the effort. We're standing outside of a courtroom right now because we just charged an individual, and the allegation is that that individual killed 2 people, including a 12-year-old. And that's where our energy and our focus is going to be. And I view everything through the prism of, can we prevent crime and can we solve crime? And if the governor has suggestions on how that can be done here in Marion County, we're happy to have that conversation. But also there's a lot that he can do with the agencies that he is in charge of that interact daily with kids, not only in Marion County, but around the state, where he could have a tremendous impact. Happy to take any questions.
I've talked to this family multiple days this week, and they're, of course, heartbroken. What do you have to say that the mom felt like nobody was notified her up until later this week from any office or any agency?
Well, we're trying to figure out the case, and the most important thing is making sure that that information is not leaked. And unfortunately, there were some close relationships with some of the individuals who were involved in this case, and so you can never compromise the integrity of the investigation. And so the detectives who are working on this case are not necessarily they were not providing that information not because they were trying to be difficult, but because they were talking to people who were directly related to individuals with the family. And so that's a difficult balancing act everybody's trying to walk involving these cases. You want to keep the family informed and up to date, but at the same time, your responsibility is to the case and making sure that that information doesn't get out until we're ready to make a charging decision, which is what we did today.
Two questions here. What is it, first off, why does it take a mass shooting to have all of these conversations among the kids?
Well, it shouldn't, but the reality is these conversations are taking place all over our city. I mean, you see community partners who are directly engaged with kids every single day, who are working with the prosecutor's office, who are working with IMPD. My issue is, if you want to be a part of those conversations, there's certainly a space, and there's certainly a space where you can provide input, and everybody values that input, and we want to have those conversations. But just to offer criticism with no solutions doesn't help anybody, and it doesn't solve any problems. Youth gun violence is not going to be solved with one single agency, with one single person. It's going to take a number of people coming together to bring real-world solutions to those challenges, because it impacts so many different areas. We talked about how it impacts schools. It impacts the criminal justice system. It impacts families. It impacts DCS. It impacts the courts. All of those things, everybody has to come together to try to find that solution. It's not going to be one thing, but these conversations have been taking place, and the governor hasn't been a part of them. And if he wants to be a part of them, no one's ever said he's not welcome. We value his input. He's in a very important leadership role, and there's a lot that he can do, in particular as it relates to the issue of DCS. The number one safeguard we have in our state for kids who are in trouble is DCS. He's in charge of that agency. And so I'd love to hear what his plans are for DCS, in particular with the budget limitations he's just imposed on the very organization who is there to provide resources and opportunities to kids.
Outside after this weekend, knowing it's WNBA All-Star downtown as a whole is kind of the major focus right now, and you have teen gun violence. You also had two other kids killed last weekend. How do you continue this conversation and continue to keep gun violence and solution-based topics in the forefront?
Well, certainly, as long as we're having that conversation, hopefully that keeps it in the forefront. But I think the other part of it is that when I'm out and talking to people in the community, they've made it very clear to me their expectation of the prosecutors and the police department is we have two kids who lost their lives downtown. They want IMPD to solve the case, and they want the prosecutor's office to prosecute the case, and hopefully we'll be in a position to do that.
Talk about real quick again about this case specifically. Had a 12-year-old victim, 19-year-old suspect, and the motive appears to be extremely trivial. I mean, talk about how we see, trivial motives being involved in a lot of these.
I mean, that's the thing that's so heartbreaking about so many of these cases is we are seeing so many young people lose their life over nothing. The allegations that are contained in the probable cause affidavit, this is literally over a slight. And two people lost their life. A 12-year-old lost their life for no reason. And these things happen far too often in our community, but that's what happens when you have way too many kids walking around with guns. They don't use them responsibly. They respond to any sort of conflict with violence because they have that gun on their hip. And that's a real challenge that we have in our community, is that we have way too many kids who have access to guns.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.